Hey, travel creators, I'm Laura, your host of the Travel Creator Podcast, and I can't even say that without laughing because that's literally never how I start the show. But this episode is going to be a tiny bit different because we're talking about distraction. And it's a huge thing that I think about a lot, and I think it's especially important to just be aware of as a creator. But I'm going to start by dishing you some facts. I can't say that they're very good, but I'm going to share them with you. Take them with a grain of salt, okay? Americans look at their phone every 10 minutes. They spend 4 hours and 25 minutes every day on their phones, and they pick up their phones about 144 times every single day. Studies have shown that checking our phones triggers the same neural pathways as gambling and drugs, which I believe. I always say it's not our fault that we're so addicted to these apps. These apps were literally created to be addictive. We are just acting as humans. So here we go, pulling ourselves out of all of the distracting crap. Okay, so those were some facts about phones, just to keep that. I want you to keep that in your head as I tell you some more information on distraction specifically. But let us define what distraction is. So focus is actually the ability to direct our attention and ignore everything else, while distraction is when we've pulled our attention away from a task or thought and shift our attention somewhere else. So switching like that, switching from one task to another is called context switching, and it can actually be really harmful, which I'll get to in a minute. But on average, it takes us 23 minutes to get back on task after being interrupted from a notification that you might get on your phone, which is terrifying. The constant buzzing and notifications that we get from our phone actually lead to stress and anxiety. And you're probably laughing at me listening to this because you're like, no shit. And I'm like, I know. But a study from the Journal of Computer Mediated Communication. By the way, I have sources for all this crap. So if you really want to read more about it, let me know on Instagram and I'll send you all the sources I have from this information, because I don't just want to pull things out of my butt and tell you that they're facts. So one study, like I said, from this Journal of Computer Mediated Communication found that people who received more notifications had higher levels of cortisol, which is a hormone which is associated with stress. That's terrifying. And it also sucks because you're a content creator and you're a business person and you get a lot of notifications. So you're probably really stressed. I mean, it just makes sense, right? You have more notifications, so you're probably going to be more stressed. I get it. I freaking get it. What I found interesting in my research, side note here, is that children, their attention spans are low. And this makes sense if you've ever been around a child. But as we age, we get back more control of our attention, and our control improves rapidly as we get older and older. There's a cat next to me. Sorry, I was watching him go by. Okay. Like I had mentioned, this context switching can be really harmful for our health. So let me spill these facts for you. It can take people on average 9.5 minutes to get into a productive workflow after switching between digital apps. And that was from a Harvard Business Review. And I know I just read to you earlier that it can take us 23 minutes to get back into a task. And that's from the University of California, Irvine. But just know it's taken us upwards of 10 minutes to get back into the work. And that should be enough of a push to be all right, maybe let's not do this. But if you're not convinced, hear me out. In 2022, Harvard Business Review, they reported that employees lose 5 weeks of work every year due to context switching. That is insane. If we can eliminate just doing multiple things at the same time, we'll get back 5 weeks of work. That would be insane. That would be if the world paused for 5 weeks for everybody else, but it didn't pause for you. Think about, what would you do at that time? Would you use it to work ahead? Would you use it to go on vacation? I mean, that is a significant amount of time. Context switching can also increase your stress. This makes sense. And it's because we're constantly switching between tasks that result in a cognitive overload. You know, when you feel like your brain is firing on too many cylinders, that is quite literally what's happening, which then leads to stress and which then leads to burnout. And so much so that it can actually cause you to physically feel sick. You can get headaches and muscle tension. What the frick? That's insane. Context switching can also reduce your quality of work. I mean, that feels accurate. That makes sense. When you switch between tasks, you're forcing your brain to work harder and to do things at lower quality. That's insane. Maybe press that little 15-second rewind button and hear that again. That's crazy. When we're switching, we're forcing our brains to work harder. And we need our little brains. We need them to work hard, so let's not stress them out anymore. It's like a little ecosystem up there, you know? They gotta take care of itself. Here's a really scary side effect of context switching. It can actually hurt your memory. So it can hurt your memory encoding, which can result in memory loss. That is terrifying. Like, that's enough to make me not want to do two things at the same time ever again. Obviously, it can also cause mental fatigue when we transition from one task to another because it requires a lot of cognitive effort. Our brain is firing, and we're using our devices all day long, and we're literally putting our brain into overdrive. There's this book, and I mention it in my interview with Alicia. That is an episode farther back. I highly encourage you to go listen to that one. It's awesome. But the book is called Burnout, and two sisters wrote it, and they mention how no wonder we're all so freaking stressed and burnt out because our brains are still cavemen up here. Our brains are focused on eating, sleeping, on safety, on making sure we can just survive. Our brains are trying just to let us survive. And we are putting in all this stimuli all day long that our prehistoric brains quite literally don't know how to process. We are still cavemen up here, so we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace because our brains are not meant to keep up with the speed at which we are living our lives today. So what does this all mean as a content creator? For one, I think it's just incredibly important to know this information. I know that you know that our phones are addicting and all that jazz, and that it's not good to switch between one task or the other. But I think for myself and other creators, I needed to just do some of this research to really see how harmful it can be. So I want you to use this episode. Oh my God, the cat jumped on the table and it's eating my leftovers. Nope. I gotta move a cat. 1 second. Oh, Lord. What was that? For real. Was that distracting? Okay. I want you to use this episode as a grain of salt and really take a moment to think about the boundaries you have, if any, or none, or all of them, set up with your devices right now. We're nearing the time of year where people are starting to think about what they want to change. And I will make an episode about how I think New Year's resolutions are bullshit because I feel strongly about this. But I still understand that setting goals and having a sort of mile marker like a new year is a good place to change goals and adjust them and make new ones. So your relationship with your device is definitely something I want to put on my list to change. There's a lot of other hobbies I like to do that don't necessarily involve looking at my phone. And frankly, I feel like sometimes it's ruining my life. Changing my relationship with my own devices is something I'm going to be working on. And I'm not just waiting for the new year to start. We're starting now because the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago and the second best time is now. So I want to hear on Instagram, what do you do to try and get yourself off of your devices? Or what do you do when you feel like you've spent a lot of time on your devices and you want to change that habit? You know where to find me by now, but if you don't, it's at Travel Content Writing on the gram. There's nothing I love more than receiving DMs from listeners. Like, people do that for me, and that is insane, and it makes me feel freaking powerful. So I will leave you with some affirmations that my 4-year-old niece left me on FaceTime yesterday. She's 4 years old, and she was saying affirmations to me before we hung up. She said, "You are powerful. You are creative. You are smart. You are brave." So happy creating. Put down your damn phone, and I'll see you next week.